Hey BookTube, Chelsea the Learning Outlaw here to do my Tome Topple TBR. Guess how many takes it took me to say that one? Tome Topple is a readathon that is all about tackling the giant books on your TBR, a tome being categorized as any book over 500 plus pages. It's being hosted by a wide variety of judges, all of whose channels I will link to down below. There are 5 challenges to the Tome Topple TBR game, but they're very, very loosely structured and very, very open-ended, which is something I always really enjoy when it comes to a readathon. This readathon runs from the 9th of November to the 22nd of November, so you essentially have 2 weeks, 14 days of some of like the most intense big book carpal tunnel wear your wrist braces kind of reading. Caveat or heads up, I guess it's not really a caveat, I will be listening to 2 of these at least, if not 3 of these on audio, because mama's got shit she's got to make for Christmas and I got big books to get through, but hands I got to keep busy. So I believe that any form of reading is perfectly valid, so audiobooks count as well, but I do have all of these in physical form, so I may do some swapping back and forth. The first challenge is just to read more than 1 tome, so like, check mark, good, we are good to go. I've got several I'm going to read, or at least I have a TBR of several I'm going to read. I will read at least one of them. Next up is the tome that's been on your TBR the longest, and I had several of these because I have a real reluctance to reading books that are this huge unless I could both get them on audio and find them at like the right time that strikes the mood. But we're forging ahead anyway. I picked The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is the first book in the Wheel of Time series. My partner is currently reading his way through all of these and he is really enjoying them. He's on the 5th one now, so I'm going to be playing catch up for a little bit. These books are huge. This particular like trade paperback copy is 738 pages, but that includes the like ephemera at the back. This is a kind of Protean Western fantasy book. It has recently been optioned for adaptation by, I believe, Amazon Prime. I think it's Amazon that picked it up. Then the cast list came out and it is full of people of color and it looks super intriguing and my husband has really interesting things to say. The series is 14 books long and at the end Robert Jordan did actually pass away, so Brandon Sanderson finished his writing. So I'm interested to see how or if that affects the storytelling by the time we get to that point. However, 14 books is a long investment, so we're just starting with the first one. Next up is a tome that is part of a series. So speaking of Brandon Sanderson, I am finally going to be getting through Oathbringer. This is, I know, did you hear baby? She's excited too. This is the 3rd book in the War of the King series. What's it even called? Stormlight Archives. The Stormlight Archive books. I have listened to the first 2 of these and I have this one on audio to listen to, which I really love the physical production. Let's see if I can find a good page. It's got like full, like all of the chapter headings are really nicely illustrated and it's got different like illustrations and maps and stuff like throughout it. It's got really beautiful end papers, but it is such a, obviously, tome, and especially we pick these up in hardback because we like to collect them, but it makes them way cumbersome to read, but I'm very excited. I can't really tell you much about it because it is the 3rd book in a series in which each book has been at least 1,000 pages. This one is no different. It is also over 1,000 pages. But yeah, I am really enjoying this tale of kingdoms, the rise of potential old mythological figures, a really interesting magical system that embraces the weather and storms and stormlight in a way that is really interesting. So I am thoroughly looking forward to hopping back into the world of the Stormlight Archives. Plus, Brandon Sanderson is writing all of the Cosmere books, so all of his universes overlap. So it's always fun to keep an eye out for Easter eggs. Next up is a tome in a genre that you don't read very much. So there are really a ton of genres that I don't read a lot of. I don't read a lot of Westerns, but I also don't have or couldn't find a Western tome. Most of the Westerns I could find were a little bit shorter. Or literary fiction. I don't read a ton of literary fiction. I'm mostly a genre girl, but I do have a couple, and one that I've been had recommended to me several times is The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. It was a book of the month pick for me, and this story basically follows the life of Cyril Avery as he goes throughout his life in, I believe, Ireland. I believe Cyril's Irish, and his kind of just history and life and evolution as a queer man living in Ireland. I have heard such good things about this book from every single person that has read it. You know me, I love queer fiction. I love a good life-spanning narrative. Like I love following a single character throughout several decades of their life and kind of going through an episodic, like a series of life events with them. I really usually enjoy that setup. So I'm really, really looking forward to this one. And then lastly, we have read an adult book. I think the implication of that question being that like a lot of people pick tomes that are more like young adult geared, which makes sense because a lot of young adult books, especially young adult fantasy books, are chunkers. They are huge. But all of mine have been adult books so far, so I'm just going to pick another book. This one's going to be a reread for me. That is The Stand by Stephen King. This is the complete, like, uncut, director's cut, unabridged edition that clocks in at, I believe, 1,100, just over 1,100 pages. So I literally just today finished listening to, I saved the first part and listened to both parts of the Books in the Freezer Best Stephen King Novels of All Time podcast episodes that they just had come out. And The Stand was number 2, which I have some feelings about, but that inspired me to reread The Stand because it is actually my favorite Stephen King book of all time. And this is the perfect time of year to be rereading Stephen King things. I haven't read this book since the very first time I read it, and it's been 4 or 5 years now. So what better time than Tome Topple to crack back in? I am really, really, really stoked to get back into this story of ultimate good versus ultimate evil in a country that has been laid to waste by a biologically engineered super disease, which is actually legitimately maybe like the most terrifying thing that Stephen King has ever written. Let me tell you, demonic super clowns, teenage girls with superpowers, demonic cars, rabid dogs, none of that shit holds a candle to Captain Trips and Randall Flagg. If you have not read it yet, I would highly suggest picking it up. Some might call it Stephen King's kind of like magnum opus. I don't know if I would go that far, but it is definitely, I think, one of his most seminal and yet less talked about works. Like less talked about in the general broad population as opposed to like avid and fluent Stephen King readers. So yeah, those are my picks for Tome Topple. I guess altogether it's probably close to 6,000 pages total in 2 weeks. When you say it that way, it sounds a little nuts, but we're going to do it. We're going to have so much fun. If I can get through even 2 or 3 of these books, I will be, if I can get through 1 of these books, I will be so incredibly stoked beyond belief. But let me know down below if you are participating in Tome Topple, what your feelings are towards giant books. Read them all the time, love them, adore them. Can't ever get through them because they take forever. Let me know what your thoughts are. Otherwise, you can leave me a comment. You can like, subscribe, leave me an emoji if you've watched this far, just so I know that you stopped by. And yeah, until next time, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have happy reading.